Last summer, cyclist Lizzie Armitstead's world fell apart. When she should have been solely focused on winning gold at the Rio Olympics, she learned that she'd been suspended by UK anti-doping. The organisation said that she'd failed on 3 separate occasions in 1 year to be where she said she would be for drug testing.
Her career, as you can imagine, was on the line. And once the story leaked to the press, so was her reputation, talking about, judgment. But the ruling against her was overturned in court, and she came back fighting, both on the track and, of course, off it.
Now, a new surname, Deignan. Congratulations. Good Irish name, that. Marries to fellow cyclist Philip. She's told her side of the story in her autobiography, Steadfast. Lizzie, welcome to the programme. Thank you very much for being with us. Congratulations on your marriage last year. Congratulations on doing so barnstormingly well in your last few races as well. It's been amazing watching your progress. But give us an idea. Take us back to there. We'll get the horrible stuff out of the way first. Take us back to that week in August when this first happened, just prior to the Rio Games.
Yeah, I think that's what sometimes lost, maybe, that people don't kind of grasp how intense it was. And it was within a week's period, being in Switzerland in the courtroom to being in Rio and the leak in between that. So, yeah, it was a traumatic week, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. And what had happened exactly? Well, explain the rules around this. This is the whereabouts scheme, isn't it?
Yeah.
That the UK anti-doping have brought in a bid to stop people from doing drugs in cycling.
Yeah, and it's obviously very important that we do have drugs testing, and we have a lot of it in cycling. And it's very difficult to kind of consolidate what happened in an interview, and that's why I was happy that I had kind of the book to put it into context and explain it, because you're basically allowed 3 strikes, they call them, within a 12-month period, and if you fall foul of that, then you're banned, essentially. And my first strike in Sweden was the strike that was overturned by the Court of Arbitration for Sport. The second strike, reported as a mistest, wasn't actually a mistest. It was a filing failure, so basically an error in my paperwork. And then the third mistest was a mistest.
Now, our chief sports writer, Tom Fordyce, has actually done this for a month, this whereabouts scheme.
Okay.
And it's a really interesting article if you ever get the chance to read it. And he says it's really quite testing. If you're somebody, because you have to be guaranteed in one place for 1 hour at the same place every single day. You have to give that place in advance, don't you?
Yes, you do, yeah. 3 months in advance. And in my sport, it's probably one of the most difficult sports to do it. I'm travelling all the time. I race at least 50 days a year and don't know my hotels until the week before. So it is difficult to keep on top of, but it is possible, obviously. I've done it successfully for my whole career until this year. So it's a system that has to be strict.
Does it work? Is there any, evidence as to its efficacy, this whether-abouts scheme?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if people have tested positive out of competition or, whether they've been caught in competition. But it's certainly necessary because there are people who will cheat in sport. And I accept that, I have to do it, unfortunately.
Lizzie, Emma Barnett on 5 Live does a thing called Eye of the Storm, a podcast about people who find themselves right at the centre of a story. And, of course, it's called Eye of the Storm for a reason. You've been in the eye of that storm. How does it feel?
Undescribable.
Surreal?
Yeah, surreal is the right way to describe it, because suddenly I started cycling at 15 and I just wanted to be a good cyclist, and then suddenly it felt very sudden. Obviously it was a progression to being that kind of public figure, but I never ever expected that I'd be on the front page of a paper with doping in the headline. But that happened.
That's the thing, isn't it? Is that doping in the headline? Because if you think back to the run-up to the Rio Olympics, all that anybody was talking about was doping because of Russia.
Yeah.
And it was in every kind of news story in the run-up, and then your name appears associated with that. But do you understand why the public maybe didn't get the nuances of it and jumped the gun a bit?
Absolutely, yeah. And honestly, I would have been one of those people who would question how on earth you could let that happen. But sometimes life gets in the way, and I'm a human. I made a human error, and it was a subconscious error. It wasn't something about manipulation or trying to deceive anybody. It's just my life unraveled very quickly, and I wasn't in control of it. But it wasn't doping, and it was very obviously to separate the two stories. The headlines is not, it's not an easy thing to do.
Because Philip's father had cancer, didn't he? And that was
Yeah.
one of the reasons. That was one of the reasons why you weren't where you said you were. Because you went back to Ireland.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Can I, Lizzie? You must learn a lot about loyalty and friendship during a period like that.
Yeah, and people said to me, "You'll find out who your real friends are," and I didn't have any surprises. And for me, that has been one of the real positives coming out of it. That I would like to say thank you, now to people who did support me, because they got me through a very difficult time. And my family. I mean, I didn't really read the public's opinion anymore after sort of 24 hours of being on social media. I stopped that, and but my family continued to, and my friends did, and there was a lot of support there, which I would like to say thank you to those people.
What was it like for your mum?
Yeah, Mum, it was an awful situation. I think you're used to having a child that everyone sort of celebrates and says, "Well done," Lizzie did well at the weekend or whatever, and then suddenly, people may be suspicious of your daughter, and it's about like being criticised for my performance is fine, but if somebody's accusing me of cheating or doping, then it's like you're criticising my upbringing, you're criticising my character, you're pulling everything apart, and that wasn't something that we ever prepared for as a family.
She couldn't help you.
No, she couldn't. No,
Which is
which
hard
was difficult
for any mother.
Yeah.
And at the time that was happening, what were you thinking about? Were you thinking about Rio, or were you thinking, I just need to survive these few weeks?
I was just getting through it. Like, through the period of waiting for the Court of Arbitration for Sport, my bike was sort of my best friend, I suppose, because I would go out and I would train and I would suffer, and my mind would be quiet for a little bit, which was very difficult to come by, those kind of peaceful moments in the run-up to the Games. And then when I was at the Games, it was just kind of, I suppose, relying on the process that I've done for so many years as an athlete. I just got into that competitive process and tried to switch off, but obviously, it was fairly impossible to do.
In terms of other competitors and what they had to say about this when it broke, I'm thinking of Bradley Wiggins and Pauline, I can't remember her surname now, but at the time, was saying things like ludicrous, that you could have got yourself into this situation. How do you feel about that, being judged by your peers?
Yeah, it's not a nice position to be in. I've always kind of it's not that I don't care, but what's important to me is not whether I'm liked or not, it's whether I'm respected. And to know that some people had potentially lost respect for me was difficult to take. But again, they didn't know the full story, and I can understand their point of view. If I'd have been on the other side of the fence looking at another athlete, I would have probably jumped to the same conclusions, but they weren't living the life that I was and didn't understand. So,
I mean, how do you pick up the pieces from that? Is it all about performance after that? Or is the book part of it too? Because I kind of couldn't help thinking to myself, you wouldn't have written this book at this point in your life unless there was something in you that wanted to set the record straight.
I was given the opportunity to write the book before Rio, before all of this happened, and an account of the first two strikes were going to be in the book that was going to be released in August 2016. But obviously it would have been ridiculous to release a book without mentioning all of this. So it was important to me that I wrote the book how I wanted it to. I'm hoping that people see that it's an honest and open, candid book. I hope that people see that I haven't kind of sidestepped anything, because I don't have anything to hide. And it seemed like a good time to release it now.
Do you still have dreams about missing a test?
Yeah, I don't think that will ever leave me. You're always conscious of the doorbell, and wherever I go, whichever hotel I check into, I'm always thinking, will I hear the door knock or whatever, it is part of my life.
Because that's the thing, and I found this fascinating reading about this and reading what other athletes have said, especially elite athletes, that a lot of them have had very, very close calls with this. They've almost missed something. And in one of the cases with you, you had your phone on silent because your teammate lying next to you was trying to sleep.
Yeah, so my whereabouts hour was 6 till 7 in the morning in this Swedish hotel. My roommate was asleep. We always share a room. And yeah, my phone was on silent. But, people say, how on earth could you have your phone on silent? Well, it's not a requirement to have your phone on loud. And actually, it's not protocol for a UK anti-doping officer to call you because it gives you prior warning. I'd done everything I could. My name was on a room list in the reception. The hotel management knew that I was on an anti-doping whereabouts system. They just didn't give my room number to the strange bloke at 6 o'clock in the morning who asked for my number. If he'd have said, I'm here to test this girl, it's important, then, he would have got a step further, but he didn't do that.
Did you have too much going on in your life at that time, Lizzie, that led to this catalogue series of you not making these tests?
Life certainly got in the way, yeah. But it's not an excuse for the mistake I made in October. I'd just become world champion. It was a filing error and I wasn't on top of it. It's, in October.
When you say a filing error, what does that mean?
It means that, it's kind of complicated, but how do I even explain it? Nobody came
Hence why the error occurred.
Nobody came to test me. It was just that they looked back on my whereabouts 3 weeks later and said, the 11th to the 12th, say, you stated that you were sleeping here. Were you sleeping here? Where's the proof of that, etc. Even though the hours slot was correct, it was my overnight accommodation, which was a mishap. So, it's
technical.
Yeah, it's technical, but, that period of time, October after becoming world champion, it's the only time I allow myself to not be disciplined and focused, and that's where I made the mistake.
Mm-hmm. There's a piece in the book where you talk about the moment that you dare to dream that you're winning the case. Describe that moment with the arbitrator chosen by UKAD.
Well, you're sat in a room across from 3 arbitrators, and one of them was chosen by UK Anti-Doping, and we knew that he was a hardliner. Just a very scary-looking man, if I'm honest. And as he was questioning the witness from UK Anti-Doping, the guy who tried to test me in Sweden, he just pulled him apart and said, this is ridiculous. Why is this in court? Stop wasting our time. And when the hardliner's saying that, then you start to think, okay, is this, this is going the right direction, but obviously you don't, I've never been in that situation. I don't know how it goes. So, it was a tense wait.
Mm-hmm. While all this was going on, obviously, your husband now, you got married was it in September of last year?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is all going on just a few months before this. What was that like for you two as a couple, given that he is a cyclist who knows all about this situation?
Yeah, Philip was an incredible support throughout the whole process. He was by my side all the time, and he looked after me at a time when, I should have been supporting him, really. And we got through it together, and I think, anything life throws at us now we'll be capable of handling it.
Mm-hmm. And when you got to Rio and you did race, what was that like? How were you able to get into your zone, the usual zone that you're in before racing, given that all of this had been going on?
I'm pretty good at it normally, focusing, turning the switch and kind of getting my head down, sunglasses on, helmet on, focus. But I'd be lying if I said it was the same as a normal World Championships or Olympics. It felt very different, and I was, to be honest, exhausted, and I just wanted to go home.
Did you feel judged?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
By everybody?
Yep.
So like you're walking into a situation with your peers and your fellow competitors and all the teams around them in the run up to that race, and you're thinking to yourself, they're not looking at me the same way as they used to.
Yes. At the time, I very much felt like that. I've I was in my bubble of kind of trauma and horribleness going on. But I think with hindsight and a bit of, distance, I can understand that actually all those people that I was thinking were thinking that of me were probably more interested in their own performance in Rio, and I was the last thing on their mind. But in that intense environment, you do get a bit lost in it, yeah.
But this has been something that has been, unfortunately, a big part of athletics for some time, Lizzie. Yeah. Have you ever been that person who's looked at someone who's been accused of doping and thought, no smoke without fire? Because you've been on the receiving end of it now. But in the past, have you been that person?
I don't know of any other cases like mine where it came down to a ban for missed tests or strikes. I only know of positive doping tests.
I guess the shadow, I guess. I guess what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's a definitive answer. If somebody tests positive for a banned substance, then they've cheated.
Lance Armstrong was in denial for many, many years, wasn't he?
He was, yeah, but unfortunately he's been proven to be a cheat.
Absolutely. Look, let's move on from this now, and let's move into another interesting chapter in this book, Equality and Power, and the kind of disparity in the run-up to 2012 about how the men's and the women's teams were treated. Was the management culture such that you could complain, that you could be kind of on the front foot and say, well, this is not right?
I think there has to be a line drawn between track cycling and road cycling, and it's very different, the approach to both. So as a track cyclist in London, there wasn't actually equal medal opportunities for men and women, so it is a wider problem than just British cycling. And then the road, where you are essentially kind of brought in at the last minute and you wear a GB jersey, and all of your preparation is looked after by your professional team. So as a British woman at that time, I was looked after by my European professional team. So my preparation was based upon their support rather than anything from British cycling. I think the crossover between the women and the men at that point came because of the Team Sky situation. So Team Sky had a lot of British athletes that raced for GB.
And a lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of resources.
When you won your world championship in 2015, were the representatives there from British cycling to see you make that achievement that should have been there?
No, I write that in the book. There was definitely a lack of leadership in 2015 at the World Championships. So our road manager was also working for the junior men's road team at the time. So I had women's team had no sole member of staff looking after us. And on the day, there was definitely things that didn't go to plan. I was let down by the team. Subsequently, I had a meeting with the senior management and told them exactly where they'd gone wrong, and they held their hands up and apologised and said, yeah, they got it absolutely wrong. And since we have a new road manager who is solely focused on us and our performance, so it was a bad move from them, but they've accepted it and progressed, I suppose.
Did they explain why the head man was with the junior men's team when you were becoming a world champion?
It was just bad management. Yeah, it was too many people and not enough management. Yeah.
And you tell about an appalling experience with a professional team when you were on tour, age 19. What happened?
Yeah, I don't know where the 19s come from.
Oh, sorry.
I think I was a bit older, but yeah. Okay. Basically,
someone will be fired for writing 19. Don't worry about that.
Well, basically, there was a dance downstairs for a male rider whose birthday it was, and I was called from my room on my own to come downstairs and take part in kind of a dancing competition, a Wii game, alongside this other rider. But unfortunately, I was the only woman there. There was another woman in terms of a member of staff, but it was, a group of riders and then me dancing kind of as entertainment with the birthday boy in front of them. And after it was over, I went to bed. And I suppose at the time I didn't really consider what it really meant. I just thought it was a bit of fun, but with hindsight, I realised it was not an ideal situation.
When did you realise that?
Only when I was writing the book. When I told the story, I sat down with William Fotheringham, who I wrote the book with, and I told him the story, and his take on it was, he saw it as quite a dark thing, and I was like, at the time, I definitely didn't feel intimidated or vulnerable.
No.
So it didn't feel like that to me, but with hindsight, I can understand that, I wasn't taken seriously. I think that's the main thing that isn't right about that story. I wasn't taken seriously.
I guess if you flipped it on its head and it was all female cyclists downstairs, would they really go up to the room of a male cyclist, wake him up, get him out of bed and get him downstairs to do a dance?
I've never had that opportunity. So I can't tell
I don't, you've obviously
Oh,
you've never seen the male cycling team raving in Rio. I did, and my gosh, they can party like no one else. I think they can out party the rowers. If you're an Olympic rower and you're listening, you might want to have a challenge. But some of the cyclist boys, oof, good grief, they can put it away after a race. Talk about a release valve.
We won't ask what the women's team are like. I expect they can give as good as they get on that front. In terms then of the inequalities that did exist, do you think it's improved significantly? Because pay used to be a big issue. The disparity shocked me. I couldn't quite believe it. Was it 20,000 to 2,000?
Yep.
So to explain that in terms of the winnings for which particular accolades.
So that was specific to the World Championships where I became world champion. And my prize money was around 2,000 versus the 20,000 of the men. And I'm pleased to say that in 2016 it was equal. It was a year late for me, but it was equal. And I think what's really important now is that, yes, there has been sexism in my sport. The women's side of the sport is much younger than the men's, but we're getting there. And it's certainly not an issue that's growing anymore. The sexism can't grow within cycling anymore because it's being addressed, it's being challenged. And, we have to be realistic. We can't jump to the same level as the men. The men's racing has been around for hundreds of years, and 100 years, maybe not hundreds of. But
It feels like hundreds.
Yeah. So we're getting there. And each year I see really positive steps. And I think that is the key to more growth, is positivity and keep challenging,
You're listening to a BBC 5 Live podcast.
If you like this, you might also like this. Flintoff, Savage and the Ping Pong Guy.
Is everybody's hunger in sport different?
I was hungry. I wanted to be the best. For me, you win or that's it.
To find out more about our range of podcasts, click, tap or swipe bbc.co.uk/5live.
And our big guest for the next little while is Lizzie Deignan, Lizzie Armitstead formerly, and her autobiography, Steadfast. Out now?
It is out
Out now.
yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you so much for being with us and for taking so many questions. I realise this is a very long interview. People are always shocked by just how long we interview people for on Afternoon Edition. We won't keep you that much longer, but there's a lovely text coming in for you from Stephen, the first one. Lizzie, you are loved by the British public. Keep on making us proud. Chin up, Cariad, he says. Is that a particular reference? I don't know what that means. Captain, possibly, and he's typed it wrongly. I don't know. Somebody
Might be
else.
Irish.
It might be, but I don't think so. From Beryl in Gloucester, I wish Lizzie could just be left alone. I watched her racing in the Olympics and I was jumping up and down and she was fantastic. There are lots of people who can see how the incident happened, and it's so typical of authorities not being in possession of all the facts. You carry on, girl, and you do what you're good at. The public support for you didn't go away, did it, during that whole thing? So did that help you coming back, making your comeback, as it were?
I think so, yeah. I mean, to be honest, the first 24 hours after the news broke, I was on Twitter and I saw a lot of vicious, angry stuff, and I switched off from it. And honestly, I don't go on social media as much as I used to, and that is probably negative because there are so many positive people out there, and it's just maybe human nature that you see one bad post and you remember that rather than the good stuff. But I am aware of the support and I am grateful for it, and I realise that it's more likely people who are negative and that are going to write something than people who perhaps, read a headline and dismiss it and don't tweet me or whatever,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people just want to be negative on social media. It wouldn't matter who it was, whether it was you or somebody else. I just wanted to mention about that race, though, because it was electrifying. So your road race in Rio, we've talked about the build-up to it and how there was all this stuff flying around, but the actual race itself, I was watching you, but then the next thing I knew, I and millions of other people were watching Annemiek van Vleuten's appalling accident. Well, it certainly looked like it, and everybody thought, is that woman going to survive that? And you had to cycle past her. What was going through your head?
Oh, it's just the worst feeling ever. Unfortunately, it's happened to me more than once in my cycling career. It's part of our sport, but to pass somebody on the side of the road like I did in that race when she was still on her own, like there was no ambulance there was nothing, and she was just curled up in a position that didn't look natural. And from that moment, the race was over. You just feel sick and you're in a sort of state of shock, I suppose. And as I crossed the finish line, that's what I wanted to know. How is she? And incredibly, she's okay. She made a full recovery.
Do you think it actually affected your mind and your race that day?
No, I couldn't. I didn't lose gold because of it. Certainly not. But I mean, to see that, the last 10K of the race, I wasn't in the same sort of mindset that I normally would be.
There were a lot of worries, weren't there? A lot of concerns about that course from the women, the men, from everybody. And just at the weekend, Michelle Scarponi died very tragically in a training ride. And I guess it just highlights again, the dangers. It's a dangerous sport that you do. How much do you think about the dangerous side of it?
Obviously, when things like this happen this weekend, it brings it home, and it's horrible. Again, I really struggle to kind of come over things like that. I didn't know him personally, but it affects me quite strongly. And I suppose you just have to carry on and, live your life and minimise the risks as much as you can.
I'm really intrigued by this "I'm not obsessively driven to success in cycling" quote by yourself, because we're kind of led to believe, and I've met enough Olympians, that they are obsessively driven to success. I mean, look, you could even play Monopoly with them and they don't want to lose at anything. So what is it then that drives you to
It's
be the
always,
best?
for me, been about the best that I can be and kind of being really conscientious about what I'm doing. So if I'm not giving 100%, then I'm letting myself down in some way. I mean, obviously I'm competitive. I wouldn't have got to this position without being, but I talk about the look in some of the other athletes' eyes.
Yeah, I saw that.
That I don't have. I don't have that killer instinct. You can try and sort of force it, but I just don't have it. Like if I have a bad race, then I can be disappointed, but I'll ring a friend or ring my husband.
You're not inconsolable.
No, I'll get over it, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, it hasn't done you any harm.
No,
let's be
it
honest.
hasn't. I think I probably have lost races in the past because I've not forced it enough, maybe.
Well, you've seen it in football, and people say. I mean, I think Theo Walcott recently said when Arsenal lost, always a good day for me. That the other I can't resist. The other lot just wanted it more. So that there's times where you just haven't wanted it enough, or you haven't wanted it as much as that person who's next to you.
Yep, that's true. But I race so much throughout the season that for me, it takes all this energy and focus to create that kind of passion and feeling. And I put that into a world championship or whatever.
And what do you like with the analytics? Because some cyclists are obsessed with the numbers, and others a bit like, look, just let me get on. Yeah, great, it's the science of it, but just let me get on and do what I do. Where are you on that?
I'm the second.
Are you really?
I'm not a numbers person at all. I love I suppose I'm a passionate cyclist that's ended up being pretty good.
Like, so I'm not amazing to hear.
I love cycling. I love sport. I'll never stop loving sport for kind of the values that amateur people love sport, I suppose. So yeah, I'm definitely not a scientist on a boat.
You've been like that from the get-go, haven't you? You had no idea how strong you were as a cyclist, even when you were first picked by somebody else. It's kind of
Well,
noticed.
we've seen that with the London Marathon this weekend, haven't we? Where
Yeah,
the fastest UK runner was
I
from
love
an amateur
that.
club.
Didn't
Yeah.
you love them? Everybody loves that kind of story. So you are still a woman with goals. So what are your cycling goals now? What are you looking at?
Well, this weekend's the Tour de Yorkshire, which is exciting for me, obviously, being from
Home turf.
Yorkshire. Yeah. And then the World Championships at the end of this year are in Norway. So I'm going to go and see that in May, have a look at the course, and I'm hoping for similar terrain to Yorkshire. It's at the end of September, so bad weather, hard roads is what I'd like. And yeah.
What is cycling pillow talk like? You're married to a cyclist.
Private,
Don't get
I would
too. I
imagine.
don't want to get too. This is, after all, a family show. But two cyclists. What do you find to talk about that's not cycling related?
There's probably a lot of,
or do you avoid? Or do you? Yeah, exactly. It's like, what do you avoid it as much as possible?
Yeah, we do, definitely. I mean, it's inevitable that it comes up in conversation, but it's actually quite nice to have somebody who
Yeah,
understands
of course, I totally
that,
understand.
you know, you're a bit of a zombie and you're too knackered to go out for dinner or whatever. And on, you know, the other side that you need to celebrate stuff. And yeah, it works for us. I don't know, maybe post-cycling we might have more to talk about or less to talk about. I'm not sure.
I've been informed that by about 10 people from Wales on the text. I'm so sorry and thank you for it. Cariad is Welsh for dear or darling. So
Oh,
there you
okay.
go, which is lovely.
Lovely, yeah.
Thank you very much indeed for that, guys. Yeah, I was reading about your and Philip's kind of day in Monaco, because you live in Monaco now. the
Yeah,
pair of you.
we do, yeah.
Oh, that
Tough,
must be
tough.
hard. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. You start out the day with a big, massive breakfast, and then you go and exhaust yourselves cycling up and down the hills of Monaco, then come back and have supper on the sofa and a bit of telly.
You and Lewis Hamilton
Yeah.
hang out.
No, me and Lewis are best friends. No.
Ooh.
No, not that we're not friends. We're just, you know.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. You might run into him. I hope not literally. Now, listen, tell us about 2020. Are you looking ahead to it? Are you looking at Tokyo? Are you thinking about it?
Honestly, no. For me, I was always thinking about retiring in 2018. Rio being my last attempt at Olympic gold, and then moving on to something else. But for me, the biggest kind of carrot is Yorkshire 2019, the Yorkshire World Championships. I think I'd regret not taking part in that. But I like the idea of finishing there. I like the idea of riding on past the finish line, riding home and having a shower in my own house and closing the door. Like,
There's a film in that.
yeah, I think, you know, there's that elusive Olympic gold medal, but I've got a silver and I gave it my absolute best shot in Rio. And sometimes, you know, in sport, you just have to accept that you're not going to achieve everything you want to. And I don't want to tail off. I want to be motivated. I want to carry on enjoying my job and stop when that's run out. I don't want to carry on because other people want me to. It's
You
going to be my
also
decision.
don't know if you might be in the form of your life and win that Yorkshire World Championship and then go,
I know it would be tempting, wouldn't it? But I will, you know, year on year. But 4 years goes fast as well. I know, but we'll see.
What's your body telling you? Because you're obviously you're having a great period at the moment, right?
Yeah, I've had a good run. Although this winter I've had quite a lot of sickness and injury. I think that's probably kind of a bit of a hangover from last year. I've definitely struggled with tiredness, but yeah, I'm only 28, so
Yeah.
exactly.
I can't use my age as an excuse just yet.
We'll be talking to you.
That's what I use all the time.
You and I are justified in talking about our age being apparent now at this point. Now, in
Yeah, I
fairness.
know. It is.
Listen, it's such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much indeed for coming on and chatting with us today. And the book is an absolutely riveting read. It really, really is. So thanks very much for being with us. Good luck with everything,
Thank
Lizzie.
you. Thanks for having me.